It's time for Wolo and Friends on Sports 56, presented by Homer Skelton Hyundai. Here's your host, the voice of the Tigers, Dave Woloshin.
As I was walking down the street.
Welcome in on a sunshiny Wednesday, the 5th of January in this new year of 2022. Both Memphis basketball teams were winners last night. However, only one team seemed to be celebrating, and that was the Memphis Grizzlies, who have won for the sixth time. And my goodness, they have a 5-game lead now for the 4th seed on Denver. They're only 3 behind Utah. Maybe you ought to start getting greedy and start looking at the 3rd seed, having home court advantage for a long way. But the story at FedEx Forum was a little different. And that has to do with the coach's reaction after the game. Now, the game was strange. And we all know that Frank Haith plays this matchup zone that has made Memphis uncomfortable. They have just struggled with it. A couple of years ago, when Lester Quinones, who had a pretty good game, when Lester Quinones was a freshman, they got doubled. They lost by 40, 80-40. They've had a couple of other bad performances against Frank Haith, whose teams are only average at best, and yet it's like kryptonite to the University of Memphis. And it started that way again last night. The Tigers don't score for 5 minutes. They're down 10-0. And then they go on their own run, a 15-0 run. I believe it was 18-3, something in that neighborhood. And Memphis righted the ship and led by 9 at the half. And then they open up a 18-point lead with about 15 or 16 minutes to go in the game. And they again lose focus. But here's the bottom line. And this is where maybe the frustration level has hit their coach, who on his post-game radio show gave short answers, but more elaborate than he gave to the regular press in his bigger press conference when he answered 17 questions in about 3 minutes with 1- and 2-word answers, and obviously frustrated. Frustrated because there was no Duren, still no Bates, no Lawson, no Lomax, and then DeAndre Williams got hurt in the last 5 minutes of the game when everything sort of fell apart. And make no mistake, DeAndre Williams is the key player on this basketball team. He's the oldest at 25. They are now 24-9 when he plays. He comes up with big buckets. He comes up with big passes. He comes up with big rebounds. He's the emotional rock. And when he went out and ended up having a heat and pad on his back, that spelled trouble. Because after Minot and Dandridge, who, by the way, had 12 points in this game, he plays well. He had a double-double against Tulsa. He's the only guy that plays well against Tulsa, apparently. When he went out and Minot went out, at the end of the game, the Tigers had 3 scholarship players left. That's it, on the floor. And that was Lester, Nolly, and Minot. And then Minot went out. So you're talking about 3 guys, and that's it. You had Harris, who really should be a scholarship player, and you had Jaden Hardaway, who's earned enough to be a scholarship player, but at the moment, with all the way the scholarships are going with the redshirt guys and everything, that's it. That's all you had. Harris and Hardaway with Lester and Nolly. Just amazing. And they held on to win. But you would think that they did not win. They win by 3, 67-64, to win for the 7th time this year, 7-5. So remember last year they were 6-5, and they ended up beating the Wichita State Shockers at home by 20, and then they went on a big run. So this year they're hoping the same thing occurs, but they didn't just win this thing going away, even though they were up 18. And even players like Minot and Quinones were saying after the game they should have done a better job of finishing, that when they go up big, they don't know how to put teams away. The one nice thing is that we're finding, and I don't know if this is going to be like Lou Gehrig and Wally Pipp, but Minot playing because Duran can't. Minot's going to get minutes now. I believe, let me see, he ended up with 33 minutes. He had more minutes than anybody else, even though he fouled out of the game. Maybe he becomes a real bona fide NBA prospect because the other guys aren't playing. He may end up being the one that gets the most out of these missing guys. And you only can hope that Duran and that Bates can finally come back. Bates has missed all these games, didn't have a splint on his finger this past game. So I don't know what the answer is going to be there, but the Tigers need him to play. He doesn't need to be the star of the team, but if they're going to be a team that ends up going to the NCAA tournament, make, say, the second weekend, Imani Bates has to be a decent player. He's got to live up to some of that potential. Duran has to play. Williams has to play. Otherwise, again, you're missing all these guys. And, players do make a difference. There is no question about that. The Minot story gets better and better. He had 11 rebounds in the game, 7 points. I was hoping he would get his first double-double. He had 5 assists, 2 steals in the game. He got 2 turnovers. One was on a charge call that I don't think was really a charge call, but the referees actually evened that up because they called the charge on a guy named Curtis Haywood, and I don't believe Haywood charged either. And that would have been an and one they would have had just the same way Minot did. So that all evened out in the end. Crazy night. Memphis wins, but it didn't feel, and I'm getting this from the team itself, it did not feel like they actually won the game. So that kind of stuff was crazy. For the Grizz, well, they're just amazing. They won their 6th in a row. Now they're 11 games over 500. So they win 110-106. This was a night where, again, they didn't have Brooks. They didn't have Anderson. They didn't have Tillman. They didn't have Melton. They didn't have Conchar. They didn't have Taylor Jenkins. The assistant, Brad Jones, took over. Taylor Jenkins went to a memorial service. I believe it was for his father-in-law. So he had a personal thing. It was not COVID, not protocol. So he missed the game. But Brad Jones, I think, got an ice cube water bath in the locker room after the game, but he's got his first NBA W. I don't know how that works. Do they give that to Jenkins or do they give that to Brad Jones?
Last time I checked, they give it to the head coach that's over the team.
Well, I remember the controversy with Mike Krzyzewski at Duke when he missed like 12 games, like he was counting the wins and not counting the losses.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah, it's the same way with Luke Walton and Steve Kerr with the Golden State Warriors. Like, Luke Walton was coaching because Kerr was out, and like all those wins were credited to Steve Kerr.
Is that the way it should be?
No.
I don't think so either. I think Brad Jones deserves that W. By the way, congratulations to Taylor Jenkins. He was named Western Conference Coach of the Month for the month of December, where they won 12 games. So Jenkins gets that, and then was there for the first win of the year, and then Brad Jones should get the credit for this, but most likely it'll be Taylor Jenkins' W. Doesn't matter. All these guys missing, and they do it again. Why? Because at the end of the game, guess who makes the plays? Guess who, when it's tied, makes the bucket over a 7-footer? That would be John Morant. Guess who makes the steal on the ensuing possession? That would be John Morant. Guess who makes the free throws when they have to foul? That would be John Morant. And the Grizzlies win 110-106. Good defense again, by the way. And when you look, you see 6 guys in double figures. Now, this is 6 guys, and I just told you who wasn't there. By the way, I saw this tweet. I don't know if it came from Brandon Clark or if it came from the Grizzlies, but in the last 9 games that Brandon Clark has played, the Grizzlies have won. Maybe he's the barometer we got to look for now. Clark's in, you're going to win the game. But here they are, as I mentioned a little bit earlier. They have won 6th in a row, 11 games over 500. That's at least the best record in the last 5 years. I want to say the 2014 Grizz, Grit and Grind, I want to say they got like to 16 games over 500. I think that's right. If anybody knows, text me on the AutoZone text line at 901-360-8255. I'm pretty sure that is right. But here they are, 11 games over, and who knows, that's 6 in a row, how long this thing will last. And as I mentioned, you've got such a cushion now. You've got a 5-game cushion on Denver, and you're almost halfway through this season. You're only 3 behind Utah. That is really kind of fun. I should mention Brett Norsworthy is going to join us here in just a little bit, and we'll talk championship game and the SEC and college football in general. By the way, LSU roughed up by Kansas State last night. So in the end, the SEC is 5-7 in the bowls. If you don't take the playoffs into account, they won 3 games in the bowl season. South Carolina, Arkansas, and Kentucky were the only winners. But I've said this forever. I'm going to be consistent with it. Even when, like, the AAC was 3-0, if you don't count the playoffs, 3-1 with the playoffs, the bowls can't be the measuring stick. The measuring stick's really the playoffs. And in the playoffs, the SEC, by the way, is 2-0, and they're going to end up 3-1 because they've got both participants in that championship game. Then at 10:42, we'll be joined by Jarvis Greer. So it appears, I've not seen anything released from the university, but there are plenty of people that seem to know that Kevin Johns is gone to Duke. So you've just replaced your defensive coordinator, Mike McIntyre, who left, and he's now the head coach at Florida International, which I believe he spent a bunch of time in South Florida. I think he grew up there. I'm really happy for Mike, and we said this before. You're not going to find a better gentleman. And I know fans are hard to please. The one thing I will say about Mike McIntyre's teams, and by the way, he's Pac-12 Coach of the Year and National Coach of the Year one year. The guy knows what he's doing. But his defenses got better every year as the season went on. I know people didn't like the 3-man rush, and they don't think he was aggressive enough, and he did get more aggressive as this season went on. But he's a good guy, and he's a good coach, and I'm glad he got a head coaching job so he can do his thing one more time. Matt Barnes seems to be a terrific replacement. You're getting a guy from a Power 5. You're getting Ohio State. It doesn't get much better. That's an elite-level team that is a playoff-level team most of the time. And this guy was making the play calls here. So you see he's 35 years old. That's an up-and-coming guy. I like that hire a lot. So now what do you do if Kevin Johns is truly gone? So I looked up the top offenses in the country, and I didn't take into account any Power 5 because it's hard to hire any kind of coordinator away from a Power 5 because most of those coordinators are making $1 million. So you have to be realistic. So now you got to find a young up-and-comer. And I know there's a plan because Ryan Silverfield always has a plan. But I looked at the top offenses, and they are in this order from the group of 5. The best offense, over 500 yards per game, is Western Kentucky. Kent State in the same neighborhood. Coastal Carolina, I love the way they play. Coastal Carolina up there. Look at their OC. Western Michigan, Fresno State, Marshall, Utah State, Central Michigan, App State. Those are the best offenses that are non-Power 5 in the country. App State, 31st in the country. And Memphis, by the way, right behind that. That's why Kevin Johns was sought after. And Kevin Johns has coached with some pretty good offensive minds. Cliff Kingsbury, Mike Norvell. He learned those offenses. There's one other guy in there, and I can't remember who it is. But he learned from a lot of good guys. But that's where I'd look. I'd look at those OCs, and you should be able to outbid Western Kentucky and Kent State to get a guy. And those were the top two non-Power 5 offenses in the country. You look at those O's, and you look at their coordinators, and you go, okay. And, maybe that's what Ryan Silverfield is doing. I know he's got a plan. There's no doubt in my mind about that.
Quick question. So I mentioned this on the morning show. Is Joe Brady is out like that? That is like a don't even think about bringing in a Joe Brady type.
Right. If you could get Joe Brady, that would be outstanding. I know he's without a job at the moment.
Yeah.
Right? He was let go by, was it Matt Rule?
Matt Rule and the Panthers. Yeah.
And the thing about Joe Brady is he's a young guy. I think there were some it was not on the field stuff, I believe. It was off the field personal stuff between him and Rule that ends up ending that relationship. I know in talking to Daz, and we that's a great question that we can ask Ron Higgins tomorrow when he joins us. And by the way, speaking of that, at LSU, Dale Brown took forever because I believe he's like 86 or 87 years old, but they named the court in Pete Maravich Assembly Hall. They named it Dale Brown Court last night. He was there for the Kentucky game, and LSU beat Kentucky. So LSU remains as a very, very good basketball team. But Joe Brady is probably going to be earmarked for a high-paying Power 5 offensive coordinator's position, I would think, because what he did at LSU was terrific. But I know this. When you talk to some of the folks in Baton Rouge, he's not the most mature guy. He's a very young guy. And that's why there was no consideration for him as the head coach, even though he had been there and had been successful. And apparently that immaturity is what undid him with Matt Rule in the NFL. So, but if you could get a guy like that, because he's clearly got a great offensive mind, I think that's a great suggestion. But I would suspect his price tag is going to be pretty high, that he would have other options. But you're right about this. We haven't heard his name in a while, have we?
No, at all.
I like the idea, but, I'm not exactly sure what the case is. One last thing I find really interesting. We'll take the break, and then our good friend Brett Norsworthy will join us. The Novak Djokovic story that is taking place down in Melbourne, Australia. So yesterday on Twitter, there was a picture of Djokovic who had been given an exemption by the government of the region where the city of Melbourne is in Australia. And now Djokovic has had at least once, but 2 years ago, COVID. Djokovic has stated publicly that he is not vaccinated and he does not want to get vaccinated. And the folks in Australia are pretty stringent. Like if you go there and you're not vaccinated, there's a 2-week quarantine and constant testing. And I don't think Djokovic wanted to go by those rules. So he applied for an exemption. And the Australian Tennis Association gave him the exemption, and so did the governmental body that governs the area of Melbourne. However, the federal government of Australia is not on board with that. And they basically have said, he's got this exemption. He's not exactly told us why he needs the exemption, and we're not honoring the exemption. Despite that, we're the federal government, and they have a thing called I'm not sure the exact title, but it's basically the border powers that regulate who comes in and who does not. And they're saying, we're not giving exemptions to anybody. If he's got a legitimate medical reason that we can publicize that he can't get vaccinated, then we'll honor it. But he better have a good reason or it's not going to be honored. I would not be shocked if Djokovic ends up, if he was on a plane going to Australia, turning back, unless he's really got something that nobody knows about, that he cannot have the vaccine. All this is going to play out in just a little bit. I'm sitting in the Family Leisure studio, and I do want to remind everybody, we got the floor model sale happening right now. You can help the good folks at Family Leisure, Lindsay and Billy and all that crew. You can help them make room for the incoming 2022 products. All the floor models are priced, and I mean good, because they want to move it. This is going to happen now. It is not one of those things that carries over. There are always good sales there, but this is cool. You get one of these floor models while they're there, because once they're gone, that's it. They're moving new stuff in. The sale prices on theater seating, massage chairs, arcades, foosball, air hockey tables, shuffleboard tables, pool tables, a whole lot more, really, really low. So you can get great deals, too, on spas and swimming pools. Get there. See what I'm talking about. Tell them we sent you. Family Leisure. The floor model sale is in full swing. We take a break. When we come back, stats from the afternoon with Gabe and Stats. It comes your way in just a minute.
The all-new Sports 56 Mornings with Greg Gaston and Eli Savoy. Brought to you by Action 24/7, James Gaddis Jewelers and Acura of Memphis. Weekday mornings from 7 to 10 right here on Sports 56 and 98.5 FM.
There's an institution in East Memphis that I love talking about. It's the Spirit Shop at 4848 Poplar Avenue, right down the street from Clark Tower, and it looks like a log cabin. It's been around Memphis since 1969 with a family-owned, friendly, knowledgeable sales staff that is just a wonderful place to go. I love going in and talking wine or bourbons, and they've got such great selection. So if you've not visited the Spirit Shop in a while, it's been remodeled. You'll love what you see when you need spirits. Tell Eddie Wolo said hello.
For years, I have talked to you about James Davis, the finest men's store in all of Memphis, the service, the selection, everything that goes with quality. And I've told you recently about the Stant Perfect Fit shirts. Well, now there's the Stant Perfect Fit pants. Absolutely amazing. Only 2 measurements fed into a computer, and all of a sudden, you've got the perfect fit pants. I'm talking everywhere. The leg, the seat, the bottom, all made to fit your body absolutely perfectly. And there's 80 different fabrics to choose from. You will find the right look, the right fit, almost instantaneously. They start at $162, but you will never find a better pair of pants than these at James Davis Men's Store. And the shirts are still there, and guess what? It's the only place in Memphis that you can find Stant. That's the James Davis Men's Store in the Laurelwood Shopping Center.
You've heard of James Gaddis Jewelers, but have you heard what they've done lately? Everything. A tremendous selection of diamonds and jewels, gold, silver, and much more. Lots of watches, tons of custom-made jewelry, fine gemstones, bracelets, necklaces, so many choices. Romantics will love the one-of-a-kind estate and vintage jewelry. James Gaddis has experts to help you with wedding and engagement rings, plus 2 repair experts for fine watches and jewelry. Layaway and financing available. James Gaddis Jewelers at 4900 Poplar.
Hi, folks. It's year end at the Sunrise Chevy Ranch. Hundreds of new and used Chevy cars and trucks to choose from with huge savings on select models. Immediate financing available with interest rates low as 0%. A $7 million used car inventory specializing in late model GM certified cars and trucks, and lots of vehicles under $10,000. Financing for everyone, regardless of past credit. Save some money and end the year in style. Huge year end savings going on now at the Sunrise Chevy Ranch, 385 in Houston, Levy, and Collierville. The best things in life may not be free, but at least they're affordable at sunrisememphis.com. Find new roads.
Remember the last time your family visited the forest? It's a place of wonder and imagination for the whole family, where stories come to life. And it's closer than you think. Ready to plan your next visit? Make the forest part of your story today at a local park near you, or find one at discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the United States Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Now, back to Wolo and Friends on Sports 56, presented by Homer Skelton Hyundai. Here once again, it's the voice of the Tigers, Dave Woloshin.
Welcome in. You know our title sponsor is Homer Skelton Hyundai in Olive Branch, Genesis of Olive Branch, the team that I think has raised the bar for the way car business should be done. If you are looking for a new car, they are getting more in every day. If you're looking for a pre-owned, there's nobody in the business better than Ray Melton. This team, by the way, has been together forever. Their leader is Chris True. And if you get on Lamar, it's Highway 78, first exit in Mississippi is Craft Road and turn left. You'll understand what I'm talking about. It's the way car business should be handled. It's the way it's done at Homer Skelton Hyundai and Genesis of Olive Branch. We head on over via great technology to our friend in Forest City. And I must confess, I read this morning, and I'm sure this happened a couple of days ago, but I was reading the obituaries, and a great Ole Miss alum who played golf for Ole Miss, became a great businessman in the state of Mississippi and in the Memphis area. Eddie Gatlin passed away in his early 80s. He was the man that founded pretty much the Memphis Motor Speedway, and I have great fond memories, as do you, Brett Norsworthy, of the Pharaohs, of which he was one of the owners as well. Good morning.
He's not on just yet.
Oh. We still do not have. Oh, we don't have Brett, huh?
Yeah, he hasn't connected in yet.
Ah, okay. You might want to try his phone number. Sometimes, if you don't have Wi-Fi, that tie line just does not work correctly. So we will wait on him. But you know, that is sad news. So our prayers, our thoughts with the Eddie Gatlin family. Also, and I never mentioned this earlier. It happened in October. Speaking of those with which I had a great deal of affection for, Mike Richmond, who owned the Blue Plate Cafe, played baseball for the University of Memphis, was a great alum and lover with passion for the Tigers. He passed away in October, and the news this morning, according to Fox 13 anyway, the news this morning is that the Blue Plate Cafe is going to close down, partially because of Mike's passing, and the restaurant business sometimes in trouble these days with the lack of a labor pool. So are we getting?
He is reconnecting right now.
Okay, reconnecting. Good, and I'll get his thoughts on that. And there's a lot of things I mentioned a little bit earlier about, and he and I think we're on the same page with all of this, in that you can't think of bowls as a real barometer, and you can with playoffs. We haven't seen an opt-out in playoffs yet. We haven't seen that I can recall a coach saying, you know what? Although Brian Kelly, before he went to LSU, Notre Dame could have been in the hunt to go to the playoffs, but it was not that way. In the meantime, I think we've got Brett now. Stats. I started this with Ed Gatlin, and I know you and I both have fond memories of the terrific Ole Miss alum who started the Memphis Motor Sports Park and was involved as one of the owners of a team that you and I both worked for, and that was the Memphis Pharaohs indoor football team.
Yes, Ed Gatlin, a really good man, and I don't know of many people that was as good to Ole Miss through the years as Ed Gatlin and the Gatlin family. Of course, Todd played very well.
Yeah.
Kicker for the Ole Miss Rebels, and Ed Gatlin. That news hit hard at the bowl site, and Ed will be greatly missed. He was a sportsman. He was an entrepreneur. He was a capitalist extraordinaire.
All right. Moving on to the championship game, repeat of the SEC championship game. I don't think anybody's surprised because both Georgia and Alabama were favored to beat the teams that they beat. Maybe surprising how badly they beat both of those teams, Michigan and Cincinnati. And I guess where I'm a little bewildered is why Georgia having lost in a fairly dominating way to Alabama, why they would be the favorite in this game. Now, Vegas knows a lot more than I do, as you know that quite well. But I would not have made Georgia the favorite in this game. Would you?
I think I would have, Dave, because it is the most neutral. I mean, it is the Switzerland of locations. And the SEC championship game wasn't. Now, that was 50-50, but Bama, the team and the fans, the comfortability with Atlanta, maybe not as much as Indianapolis. This is one of the strictest all-time neutral sites that you'll see. I mean, they might as well be playing in Guam. To be playing in Indianapolis, and I think that will be to Georgia's slight advantage, as they are the slight favorite. But this time for Georgia, they've got to make sure that Bryce Young doesn't beat them in the air. But I think Alabama will improvise. They've been protecting and very much, I won't say coddling, but very protective of Bryce Young all year, coaching him not to run because they have nothing behind him. There's no plan B if he got hurt. I love the great-great-grandson of Coach Paul Bryant, the backup quarterback, Paul Tyson, but Alabama has no prayer if he goes in. They would have to really lean on all the good vibes of his great-great-granddad if Bryce Young went down. But for a one-shot game, cut loose, Bryce Young. If you have that opening, take it. And when you run those safeties, and Dave, you know in this modern football, when you run 5 wideouts and you run everybody on the go route, well, it leaves the middle of the field wide open. And Bryce Young, I think, can exploit that against Georgia in the rematch. I'm going to pick Alabama to win the game 27-24. Not as big as last time, for sure. They have defeated Georgia the last 2 times they played them, 41-24 by the same scores the last 2 times they played in Athens and in Atlanta. It won't be that bad this time, but the tide will roll. Dave, one thing everybody's saying about the 2 semifinal games. Cincinnati and Michigan had no chance. But you know what else? You know who else didn't have a chance? The other 126 teams. Yeah. Whomever in those games against Georgia and Alabama were mostly all were going to look like that. Maybe if Ohio State had tapped into their A game of the year, I think Ohio State's roster composition, and depth is probably the closest thing to Georgia and Alabama.
People are going to argue that if you've got 2 semifinals that are so one-sided, if you opened it up to more teams, it would be even worse. I disagree with that because I think maybe you'd have some one-sided stuff with your 12-1, 11-2, but I think all the other games would be compelling. And Mike DeCourcy made this observation yesterday where he said, and if you opened it up to that many teams, there would be really good players, 5-star players, 4.5-star players that would go, I don't have to go to Alabama or to Georgia or to Clemson or to Ohio State or Michigan in order to make the playoff. I can go to my local school. I can go to Ole Miss because we're going to get into the playoff with 12 schools. I kind of buy that whole theory, and I think those other games, other than the first round 12-1, 11-2, are going to be really compelling games.
Well, it wouldn't be 12-1 because you have in a 12-team setup, you'd have 4 teams with a bye. It'd be a 5 versus 12.
Right, you're right.
And that may redound to a closer game, but I don't think so. I think it'll be more fun. I think it'll keep more teams involved. But when we get down to the end, if we had a 29-team playoff, I can tell you who's going to be in it when we get down to the end. The last first-time national champion in college football was the Florida Gators in 1997.
Wow.
And we will not have a first-time national champion this year either.
Nope, sure will not. And I'm with you. I think Alabama will win that game. No doubt in my mind. All right, so Memphis appears to be losing Kevin Johns. I've not seen any kind of official statement from the university, but enough insiders are saying he's already in Durham, North Carolina, ready to be the OC at Duke. I looked at the top offenses in the country that were not Power 5 because I think it'll be hard for Memphis to pay the money to get a guy that's already a Power 5. Although they did get, now remember he was a safeties coach, but he was calling the plays for Ohio State when they got Matt Barnes. So maybe I'm wrong about this.
Great addition.
But I think so too. But Western Kentucky, Kent State, Coastal Carolina, Western Michigan, Fresno State, Marshall, Utah State, Central Michigan, App State. Those are all in the top 30 offenses in the country, and those are probably the schools you could raid to find an OC. But you know, coaches, as well as anybody in the game, if you were Ryan Silverfield and Laird Veach, which OC would you go? What guy would you go after to become your OC?
Well, I would go after somebody out of that Georgia, Alabama analyst room, that type. Maybe they haven't been on the field yet. Someone like that. I'm just using this as a name. I'm not saying this person exactly, but an Alex Mortensen type that's been in that Alabama laboratory, or as the Brits call it, the laboratory. I mean, it's something that Alabama football office. It's something the East German Olympic team would envy in the late 70s, early 80s, is just pumping out, notorious athlete after athlete, whatever it was, track or field, men or women. And the Alabama office is churning these coaches out. Georgia as well. I would look for somebody along those lines, maybe an analyst type that hadn't been on the field yet or in the press box calling the shots.
So you're still saying a younger guy. You're not talking about a guy like the Butch Jones hire that Tom Bowen made at Arkansas State after he went and became sort of a consultant for Nick Saban.
No, I'm talking much younger.
You're
man.
talking about a young up-and-comer.
Maybe somebody late 20s or early 30s.
Mm-hmm.
It's somebody really fresh, energetic. It's a young man's game. We know that. It makes us the oldest around, Dave. And it's important to have that identity with that quarterback room and with those skill position players for a younger voice.
Now, Zach Boyd, who is filling in for Jay Morgan this week, came up with a good idea. I don't know what his status is now. I don't know if there are other Power Fives going after him, and Memphis would end up in a bidding match they couldn't win. But what about Joe Burrow, the former LSU guy that
Brady?
Joe Brady. I'm sorry, Joe Burrow. He coached Joe Burrow.
Yeah,
Joe Brady.
Yeah, he did.
Joe Brady, who got on the wrong side of Matt Rule in the NFL. What would you think of that hire? Because he's a guy who's very young.
It would be great, but I don't think there's a prayer of that happening. I think he's on that NFL train and will stay on it.
So you think he'll be back in the NFL next year? Were you surprised at all LSU didn't even consider him in that hunt when they eventually snagged Brian Kelly?
A little bit. I was holding out some hope maybe for Ole Miss, but I think he sent out enough warning that he's going to stay in that NFL system and that NFL retirement. It's better than Congress's.
It is good. I don't know if it's better than Congress. That their health care is pretty darn good, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, lifetime for anything.
Yeah, there you go. I kind of like that. You got to tell me. I know it didn't work out the way exactly you wanted, but give me your Sugar Bowl experience.
It was fantastic. Ran into a better team, and I don't know what would or wouldn't have happened with Matt Corral if he had been able to play the whole game. But I know what was happening when he was in there, and it was no time to throw. The Baylor defensive line really did a number on the Ole Miss offensive line, only like Alabama did all year. The two best defensive lines Ole Miss played all year was Baylor and Alabama. Probably the third best was LSU, maybe Tennessee's at time, or Auburn's at time. But Baylor did a real number on the Ole Miss offensive line, and I think it was going to be a narrow game with or without Matt Corral. And after he got injured, you knew it would be tough for Luke Altmaier, who had his moments. It was almost too big for him, though, with taking off and running. Matt Corral was just such an accomplished runner, and Luke Altmaier looked like he was very hesitant to run. May have been coached to be that way because I don't know what the third quarterback situation would have been if he had gone down. So he may have been told, unless you have to run, don't run. But he had some good throws. Didn't have a lot of time.
But Baylor, with their running game and with their physicality, was something. It was the good kind of nasty, and they were ready for that game. And I've talked about it a bunch this week. Dave, what a turnaround for the Baylor athletics program from the despair that they had. Mac Rhodes has done a great job to win it all in basketball, always good in women's basketball, to win the Big 12, to win the Big 12 championship game, to win the Sugar Bowl, to win 12 games. Quite an accomplishment for Dave Aranda in year 2. Matt Rule did a good job between Art Briles and Dave Aranda. And they were just too much for Ole Miss at the Sugar Bowl, but still a great year. To go 10-3, to have the highs that Ole Miss had this year. I think the home win of the year for me was probably the Wild Arkansas game to stop that 2-point play. The Eli Manning day against LSU was great, but the road win of the year was easily up at Tennessee.
Yeah, you think about it. You bring up a great point. 15, 20 years ago, Baylor was not a relevant football program at all. And 15 or 20 years ago, the basketball program was mired in the Dave Bliss scandal. Yeah. And where they have come since then is light years. And it's a real credit to the folks in Waco.
It is. And, Dave, right now, I think the most underreported story, maybe in American sport, is Baylor continuing in basketball. They're 14-0, yep. 3 quad 1 wins already off the heels of a national championship, and nobody's talking about them.
No, you know what? And think of the players they lost from that team. The 2 stars are the 2 guards that are now in the NBA, and yet here they are, still undefeated and still number 1. All right, I know you when you rank quarterbacks and your love and great relationship with the Mannings. You're going to make Ole Miss quarterbacks 1, 2. They're going to be Archie and Eli in some order. Is Matt Corral the 3rd best quarterback, you think, in Ole Miss history? I kind of like John Forcade, but I know Matt Corral's better than John Forcade.
I love John Forcade. I have a very soft spot for Bo Wallace, 39 straight starts where he is in the record book. But I'm going to shock you, Dave. I think Matt Corral was the best Ole Miss quarterback at Ole Miss ever.
Whoa! You are shocking me.
Yep.
Best ever. Well, I'll say this much. He's as tough as any guy I've ever seen at any position on a football field. Like that dude.
And a real leader.
He wants you to take him on. Try to hit me.
And I hated to do it to my friend Wesley Walls, but my first favorite Ole Miss player ever will always remain Archie. Second will be Eli. Third now is Matt Corral.
Over Wesley Walls, huh? Wow, yep. you know who my
Dexter McCluster fifth.
I got to put my man Mike Fitzsimmons in there. Come on now.
A grinder for sure.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, my friend, thank you much. I appreciate it. And
you got it, Dave.
I'm sorry.
Good win last night. A win's a win.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's like I said
take them any way you can get them.
You know what? There were 2 wins last night for Memphis basketball teams. Only one team celebrated. It'll be interesting to see where the injuries and where this attitude goes, because that was clearly a frustrated Penny Hardaway, unlike any other time I've ever seen him.
I would always text Josh Pastner after that ugly win, and he would always laugh about it. Never seen an ugly bride or an ugly baby or an ugly win.
Speaking of which, since you bring it up, did you see him last night in that crazy mask that he wears?
Josh is back to the hazmat suit.
He sure is, and
that's his business. If that's what he's comfortable with, that's fine.
That's what, he's such a good dude, and he was one of his players sort of got in it with Mike Krzyzewski, and pure Josh-like. He was defending both guys. I loved it. He was terrific.
Mike Krzyzewski, a little out of line, kind of went, do you know who I am? Yeah, we know who you are.
That's exactly what the player said he said to him. Do you know who you're talking to? I mean,
yeah, I know who I'm talking to.
Yeah.
The same guy that I was sad to see Nate Oates back away from last year and issue the apology. Look, Mike Krzyzewski, we know you're sainted. We know your place in the game, but you're not untouchable.
Pure Josh, though. Defending both. I loved it. I really did.
Josh is a better man than I am.
Happy New Year. Healthy.
Happy New Year.
And joy this year for you and your family.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you. Talk to you next week. That is our friend Brett Norsworthy. You'll listen to him and Gabe every afternoon, 3 to 6 on Sports Time right here on Sports 56 and 89.5. This portion of the show is brought to you by the good folks at the place to go downtown. I think it's a cool place. It is Old Dominic. And by now you have to know all about the Old Dominic Distillery. It's the place where you can go and take a tour. You can learn about the craft of distilling. You can then try, after you get this history lesson and you learn about from grain to glass, the way they distill spirits, then you can try them. And there's a full portfolio of Old Dominic spirits, pure Memphis. And they remind everybody, share a sip responsibly. Let's celebrate, and let's celebrate responsibly with Old Dominic, Memphis's great distiller of spirits. We pause for a second. When we come back, our good friend Jarvis Greer from Action News 5 is right around the corner.
Brett Norsworthy and Gabe Kuhn drive you home with Sports Time on Sports 56. Brought to you by DeSoto Auto Sales. Weekday afternoons from 3 to 6 right here on Sports 56 and 98.5 FM.
Brian Elder's Roofing Solutions.
I'm Brian Elder, 867-0303. Hurricane season is upon us. Is your roof ready? Are your shingles laying down and sealed properly? Call me right now, 867-0303. They say you get what you pay for. That's why my opinion is free. Maybe you've got years of life left in your roof. If so, I'll tell you that. But if I find storm damage or a compromised roof system, I'll lay out some options for you. Don't let them tell you it needs to be replaced if it only needs a repair. Call me, 867-0303. Has your insurance company already seen it and rejected your claim? Maybe they're correct. Most of the time, they're not. They do tend to become more reasonable once I get involved, though. 867-0303. I'll measure your roof from outer space or BrianElderRoofing.com.
Call 867-0303. Brian Elder's Roofing Solutions.
Sure, we have 30 seconds to tell you that drivers who switch to Progressive could save big. But then what? Well, radio has been called theater of the mind, so let's tell a story with sound effects. Wow, it's like I was in the story. Almost makes me forget this was supposed to be about saving big with Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates.
Acura of Memphis invites you to experience the all-new, completely redesigned 2022 Acura MDX. It's the most advanced SUV Acura has ever built. Experience the convenience of full connectivity, including built-in Alexa, Wi-Fi hotspot, and wireless charging, from the stunning interior complete with third-row seating. Stop by our state-of-the-art facility and take advantage of our aggressive APR offers today at Ridgeway and 385. Or shop online from the convenience of home now. Visit AcuraofMemphis.com.
At Jason's Deli, when you're dining in or picking up curbside, you can expect wholesome food and no surprises, just delicious sandwiches, crisp salads, and quick quality meals made with the freshest ingredients and no artificial trans fats, MSG, high fructose corn syrup, or artificial colors and dyes. Around here, a lot of thought goes into what we put into our food and what we take out of it, because you're not just taking a bite, you're getting a taste of who we are. New items are constantly being created to expand our menu for all tastes and special diets, with vegan and gluten-free options available. Convenience and on-time delivery you can count on. It's just a click away at jasonsdeli.com, so whether you need to feed 5 people or 5,000, the team at Jason's Deli, they have the credentials and the commitment to keep you satisfied. Freshness is nearby at Jason's Deli, with locations at Ridgeway in the Park Place Center, Poplar and Highland, Germantown Road in Cordova, and on Goodman Road in Olive Branch. Jason's Deli. It's wholesome food and no surprises.
Now, back to Wolo and Friends on Sports 56, presented by Homer Skelton Hyundai. Here once again, it's the voice of the Tigers, Dave Woloshin.
She's a good girl.
Charvo in just a second. He's brought to you by Conway. When's the last time you had your heating system cleaned? About a safety inspection right now, Conway's offering that 16-point energy saver super tune-up on your heating system for only $69. They come out, they perform the 16-point energy, just perfect cleaning. I mean, that's what they do. They go inside, they go outside, and now they're including a safety inspection using their state-of-the-art camera system to make sure everything is operating perfectly. And then, all for $69, they will do a carbon monoxide test on your system. You get peace of mind, I promise you, and your system really becomes much more efficient, and it lasts longer. All you got to do is make the call, 384-3511, Conway Services, heating, cooling, plumbing, and electric. Last night was a strange night, Jarvis Greer. Both Memphis basketball teams were winners. However, only one seemed to be really happy. It was a crazy scene, almost surreal, at FedEx Forum in the Penny Hardaway postgame press conference. Good morning.
Good morning, Dave. I was going to ask you, is your heart back in your chest yet after the way that game ended?
That
wow,
was crazy.
It's like, oh my goodness, the whole oxygen could have been sucked out of FedEx Forum to hit that shot at the very end.
Yeah.
That was just absolutely crazy. That was like three different games in one. The horrible start, great middle for the better part of the ball game, and then just an absolutely crazy ending. But that's Tiger basketball.
Yeah.
They got the W. That's all it could. And then Penny at the end. Woo, that was like a Bill Belichick press conference, wasn't it? It's like
somebody
give you 2 or 3 words.
Somebody actually said that exact same to me as we were walking out. He said Penny pulled a Bill Belichick. I really think that is the most frustrated I've ever seen Penny Hardaway.
Oh, I have never seen him, and I've covered him since he was in high school. Since he was an 8th grader at Treadwell, and he's always been very effusive, very, very, loquacious, very any adjective you want to put on Penny Hardaway as far as, his affability in public. He's a great speaker, but he was at a total loss for words, and you could almost see the veins popping in his neck. He was like, if you could say PO'd and say it all the way out, that's exactly what he was after that game. Well, I don't blame him. I don't blame him.
When you think about this, you started off the year with so much talent that you had your son, who's become a pretty good player, and you had Tyler Harris, who got a lot of minutes last night. I mean, Tyler Harris ended up playing almost 17 minutes. They're walk-on players. That's how many great players that had scholarships that you had. And last night at the end, you were down to 3 scholarship players because of injuries and red shirts. It's just a crazy year filled with drama on every step of the way.
Well, it's been drama every year, pretty much. With this, other than the first year when you knew that you were going to be playing with Tubby Smith's players,
right?
And that was a fairly stable and set roster. There was nothing you could do. Nobody was going anywhere. That's before the transfer portal and all that other kind of business. And now it's just players go willy nilly. You got the COVID. You got of course we talk about the portal, and you got the NIL, and you got all kind of everything going on, and it's just been a whirlwind. But they got the dub, and that's the only thing that matters out of that game. Just get the dub and move on. But you hope that that you actually get your holster full, your quiver full of arrows the next time you go out.
Yeah, and then there's the Grizzlies. They're amazing, Jarvo.
Man,
they are a solid playoff team now, and I watched First Take yesterday, and they said forget just the All-Star team. Ja is at this moment the MVP of the league.
Well, look at the way he's playing. Look at the numbers he's putting up. He just got the Player of the Week in the Western Conference. Averaged 37.4 points per game. Umpty-up assists, almost 8 rebounds a game, and outdueled LeBron head-to-head, who had a great game in that head-to-head that meeting they had at the Lakers at FedEx Forum. And then he puts on this show last night where he's just having a ho-hum game. Everybody else is playing pretty well. And then at the end, he's John Morant. All of a sudden, boom, he gets that great layup to break the tie, and then he gets the steal and the layup to put the cherry on top, along with a couple of free throws. So it's like the guy can just do anything on the basketball court. I'm so glad that, I grew up watching the NBA. My dad was an NBA fan. I remember the days of Wilt Chamberlain and Jerry West and on all the great players. And, Willis Reed was my first favorite player, along with I even like Hal Greer when he played with the Chicago Bulls, because I thought, he was a relative, but he's not. But, it's so I go way, way back watching that. And this dude, man, Memphis has something special. I always wanted, in my city to have a player and have a team to root for
Yeah, you got 'em
that
now.
would be known on a national stage. This is international now. Everybody knows about that.
No doubt about it. Jarvo, have a great rest of the week. We'll do this again next Wednesday. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you. I hope your heart won't be palpitating too much when you go to Cincinnati.
Me too.
Right.
That is Jarvis
Okay.
Greer from Action News 5. That'll do it for us. Johnny Radio is right around the corner. Have a great day, everybody.